slow. It won't go.
I think you ought to know. That Men's Radio. The place where men and women really speak. Oh man, what a show. It's Men's Radio. This crazy show is on 3 times a week. Now Russ and Phil are there to help with all your cares. We laugh, we cry, we talk like grown-ups do. But if you're sad and low, it won't cost you no dough. Men's Radio, that's the place for you. With Russ Kane and Phil Dave.
Oh, it's off again. Do we have to listen to it again?
No, we don't have to listen to it again. No, I'm done with it, mate. Done with it. Hi, everybody. I'm Russ Kane. He's Phil Dave. This is the Daily Show exclusive to Men's Radio Station, now part of the Sound Mind Radio Group. More of that later. Phil, a packed show, a different show.
A very different show today, but it's fine, don't we? We like different.
We kind of like different. All well with you? Everything good? Everything okay?
Oh, spiffing, thanks. Yes, absolutely.
Spiffing, that's what we want. Ladies and gentlemen, let's bring on our first guest because we've got so much to get through today. He is the CEO of Ditch the Label. Ladies and gentlemen, here he is, Liam Hackett.
Oh, the crowd goes wild. If only there was a crowd.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good. Nice to be here. How are you doing?
Well, you say that now, but within 3 minutes, you'll be thinking, Jesus, why? Just why?
I have to congratulate you. You've got like a proper little studio setup going on behind you there. You've got the token plant. You've got the blind that could be put in front of a false window. And you've got the high back leather chair. It's looking very professional. Good work.
Very professional. Very professional. It's all in a fruit shop. Who the hell knew?
Yeah.
Right, Liam, tell us about yourself and why you're here, because I like the idea of your company, etc.
Thanks so much. Well, I'm the chief exec of Ditch the Label. We're a global youth charity, and we're here to help young people aged 12 to 25 navigate the really tough stuff in their lives. So whether that's mental health, bullying, identity, relationships, Ditch the Label is there to provide professional and confidential advice and support.
So let's dig a little deeper. Where you say label, what are we talking about? Sort of those who are sort of being labeled as having maybe some sort of condition or something like that, and therefore society treats them differently. Sorry, I'm 2 minutes and I've used the S word, but society treats them slightly differently, or what are we saying? Sorry.
No, not necessarily. It's not a literal ditching of a label. The idea of Ditch the Label actually started when I was 15 and had experienced a lot of bullying growing up. And as a 15-year-old, really kind of felt this real urge to ditch the labels that was being put on me and to kind of just embrace who I actually was, and started to kind of become vocal about my experiences online back in the days of MySpace, and had hundreds of people message me.
You don't look old enough to even remember MySpace.
I loved MySpace. That was the first ever social network. It was incredible.
No, it wasn't. No. The first one before that was Friends Reunited. Little did they know what they were going to create. Friends Reunited, yeah.
And if you go back far enough, it was the box social on a Sunday evening.
The what?
The box social on a Sunday, or whatever it was. You know, little dances. You know, the little dances they held in America or what have you. So the box social, where everyone would sort of go along and have a little boogie together.
No. You were on drugs with it.
You're old enough to remember that, but anyway, you know what?
I don't remember the beat.
I'm mostly impressed already, and I tell you for why, because this is a subject that's very close to my heart, because I have made it no hidden secrets that during my school years, I was subject to quite a lot of bullying myself. It's a word I don't really like, because I think that instantly, as soon as you say the word bullying, it makes someone sound like a victim, and I've never considered myself.
Well, it does. Well, it does and it doesn't. That's unfair.
No, I don't know. I think it does. I think it sort of does. And that's why what? I'm the one who's gone through it. I think I'm allowed to say it.
And some, hairy-assed idiot at school is bullying the shit out of you, then quite frankly, you're being bullied.
No, I know, but I'm saying that I don't consider myself, having gone through
No,
that,
you
a
are.
victim.
You've never felt like You've never felt like.
You let me finish, for crying
No,
out
because
loud.
you're boring
Right.
me. I want to listen to Liam, for Christ's sake. That's what I want to do.
Anyway, what I was trying to say was, before my
He's
esteemed
travelled
colleague tried
miles
to
to be here.
drag this out even longer than necessary, is that sort of I think that when it comes to bullying, it can either make or break a person. I consider myself quite lucky that I think it helped build my character. And I wonder from your perspective, obviously, whether or not you obviously see similarities, because you've clearly done some good with it.
I do. And there is this victim part of it. And, you know, kind of when I started Ditch the Label, it was almost out of a frustration because I didn't want to feel like a victim. And the stuff that existed was all about putting you into that box of a victim and putting somebody else into the box as the bully. And it, to be honest, was a little bit patronizing. And so Ditch the Label has always been about being empowering. You know, you're not going to see the word kind of bullying with a red circle and a line through it. We're in the kind of environments where young people are, and we're real. We're giving them real, honest, frank advice and support. And, you know, before Ditch the Label, that didn't really exist. And I totally get what you're saying about the victim part of it. And it's disempowering.
Right. Question coming in, Liam Hackett. Far too good looking, according to Francine Warner, who's clearly fallen in love with you. Liam, it's from Leslie Demesa. How do young people find out and then access your service? To be perfectly frank with you, I counsel young people, and I didn't know about Ditch the Label until just now. Yes, she is a counsellor to young people. So can you answer her question?
Yeah, it's really straightforward. So they just go to ditchthelabel.org. And they can get instant access to all of our support resources. We have an online support community. And on this community, we have clinically trained therapists, counselors, psychologists who are giving free and confidential advice and support on a massive range of different issues. And from winter, we're actually piloting therapy in the metaverse, which is something we're really excited about. We're doing it in partnership with Maybelline. And you know, it's kind of about our commitment about providing digital support to young people in the places where they already are. So yeah, in summary, it's super easy. It's very quick. We just launched our brand new platform at ditchthelabel.org. We've got a bit of AI on there that's going to help you find the resources that you need. Couldn't be easier, to be honest.
So really, are you, and I mean this in a very positive way, you're signposting? You're really a signposting organization.
No. So we actually have a team of digital mentors who are providing the direct advice and support to young people every single day. We've also got hundreds of resources on the website that young people can access free of charge. It's really easy to find, and it ranges from guides to tools to meditations. We are doing all of that direct delivery ourselves. In some cases, we do signpost. So if somebody comes to us and they are struggling with something that isn't in our area of expertise, or perhaps they're outside of our age range, then we will find the right support services.
So what is your question coming in? Do schools and GP practices have posters and flyers about your service? If not, they need them. Do they? They do. Okay.
Some of them do, yeah. Some of them do. We get over 1 million young people every year on the Ditch the Label website, and they generally are finding us online. But there is a huge opportunity for schools and GP practices.
And what's the age range, Liam?
12 to 25.
12 to 12. Oh, I'm just outside it. Feels all right.
You know,
just miss it.
Let's imagine that someone was to approach Ditch the Label. What is it that they would expect to be on the receiving end of? So how does the process work? Let's just say that some young person reaches out to you. What happens?
So say you're a 15-year-old and you have symptoms of anxiety, and you on a Sunday night are feeling terrible about going to school the next day. You'll sign up to our platform and you'll start a conversation about that. And then you will have a trained mentor who will come in and will start to give you advice. But what's so incredible about this platform is other young people will come in and they'll say, oh, I've also experienced that. I know exactly what you're going through. This is something that worked for me. And all of these conversations are fully facilitated.
And is this free? Liam, if they sign up to you. It's
Yeah.
free. No
Completely
subscription, nothing.
No, we're a charity. So the way we
So
work
you're
and the way,
registered, just to be clear, you're a registered charity.
yeah.
Okay. All right.
So we work with select partners. So Maybelline is one example. We're partnering with them on initiatives around mental health. And so they actually provide funding to provide the direct support to young people. So it means that we can grow our team of clinically trained mentors. So it's all completely free of charge. And, you know, to my point, what's so great about it is not only are the young people getting that clinical advice and support, but they're also joining a wider community of people that really get them. And there's a lot of evidence around peer-to-peer support and how helpful it can be.
Hugely important.
And we
put
you know, we
this
hear from,
up. It says, Liam, this is coming in from Wolverhampton. I'll read it out because not everybody watches the show. A lot of people listen to the show. Liam, much talk about gender identity and sexuality in the media. How do you find young people are dealing with media influence and being able to make their own identity, sexuality decisions?
I think media influence has a huge role in all forms of toxicity and prejudice, and it's not just around gender and sexuality. In fact, in the pandemic, we did an enormous study and we analyzed 20 million conversations online, and we found that online hate had increased.
Whoa. You analyzed 20 million. Well, how did you do that? How?
So
you can't throw that grenade into the room and walk away. How?
We work with a research partner called Brandwatch, and Brandwatch essentially usually is used commercially. So if you're Coca-Cola and you want to know what people are saying about your brand and how they feel about a campaign you just launched, for example, you would turn to an organization like Brandwatch and they will scan the entire internet of publicly available information on platforms like forums, Twitter, other social platforms, and they will tell you. So we are able to work with that methodology. So we took a sample of 20 million conversations throughout the pandemic. We found that online hate had increased by 40%. What was interesting is we found that Asian hate specifically had increased by almost 1300%.
Sorry, Asian hate, are you saying?
Racism towards
well, we could
Asian
talk about
community.
that, but I don't want to get into hot water particularly. Now, that's very interesting what you said. How the hell have you done 20 million algorithms a go-go, right? Is the platform monitored to it? This is leading on from what you were just saying. Is the platform monitored to ensure negative influence from other young people is censored? Very good point.
We have a hybrid model. So we have human moderators, and then we also utilize AI tech on our platform. So every single conversation, everything is completely moderated. You know, if you kind of go onto our platform and you say perhaps you're in a dangerous situation, for example, that content will also automatically be held, and then all of our support team will be flagged. So in most cases, within half an hour, we will have somebody at their door to do welfare check and to make sure that young person is safe.
You'll have someone at the door, did you say?
Yeah.
Physically there?
Yeah.
So do you have, I'm sorry to dig down, but do you have actual staff who do this? Because most people are just dealing with the stuff virtually. You have actual staff who can get in the car or bus.
So in the case of if somebody, okay, for example, if somebody is in crisis and they make a declaration on our platform that they're considering suicide, we will have the police at their door in most cases within half an hour to do a welfare check to make sure that young person is safe, to give them the immediate physical support that they really need around them.
Okay, that's excellent. How many of you in the company?
So at the moment, there's 20 of us, and then we have a team of mentors who are distributed globally, who are providing the direct support.
And those mentors, they're all trained. They're trained and they're proper therapists, etc.
Yeah. So our team of mentors, they're therapists, they're counselors, they're psychologists. They've all had clinical training and are providing this service completely free. You know, we hear from young people all the time that there's enormous waiting lists on the NHS.
Well, it's crazy.
Many aren't in a position to privately access therapy. And so there's this enormous gap in provision where there's a huge amount of young people and adults too, who really need immediate access. And so we're really passionate about helping bridge that gap and providing democratized access to that level of support.
You know, one of the things that strikes me about the work that you're doing is that it's so obvious to me that one of the problems when one is going through bullying or sort of in that position is that there's this sense of feeling so alone. It's as if it's only happening to you. And the fact that you are connecting them with others who are going through the same thing instantly, even without any professional therapy, I can't help but think that that must make a huge difference to the actual psychological thing behind it.
Just hearing "me too" or "I understand what you're going through" is so powerful. And a lot of young people join our platforms and they don't necessarily have the literacy to describe in a word or two what they're going through. They are more symptomatic. So they talk about how they're feeling, what they're doing. And so we help them build that literacy so that they can articulate what they're going through. And the community element is hugely powerful. You know, if you're struggling with your mental health, for example, it can feel so isolating. You can feel like the whole world is against you. And we can't ever underestimate the power of communities.
Is DT, this is coming in from Dave Sleet, who's the Grand Fromage of APA. Is DTL using psychological supervision support of the mentors?
Yeah, so all of our mentors have clinical supervision. This is every 2 weeks. Essentially, this is used with people who work in clinical roles, and it's to ensure that their well-being is always at the forefront. It also gives them an opportunity to talk about any potentially difficult situations that they've had to deal with. And it's a really powerful tool. So we offer that as a one-to-one basis, but we also offer group clinical supervision, which is very powerful, particularly if we have some young people who have complex needs and maybe getting support from one or two mentors. It can provide a really great forum to build best practice.
When did you start this again?
When I was 15.
When you were 15.
I'm 32 now, so it's been a while.
Oh, yeah, ages. So you started this at the age of 50. That is freaking incredible.
Thank you.
Because I know how hard this is. I mean, there's a lot of parallels with what you've achieved and where we're going with Soundmind Radio Group and MRS and WRS. Very interesting.
Would you be able to guesstimate how many people you've helped over the years?
Good question.
So many. Well, we get between 1 to 2 million a year on the website.
Oh my God.
But you know what's fascinating? So the campaign we just launched with Maybelline, we have 2 women in it in the campaign, Luna and Abby, and they received support from Ditch the Label years ago. And now they're in a position where they've kind of, grown and learned and moved on from the situations that was holding them back. And they were telling me about how the support they've had from Ditch the Label has then gone on to influence their career pathway. So one of them is now, kind of studying psychology at university. The other one is now a support worker. So because we've been going for so long, we're now getting these catchments of, millennial generation who experienced our support, and it is so powerful. It gives me goosebumps, like kind of hearing those stories.
Important question. Does the Children's Commissioner know about your service? If not, please start bombarding her with info about what you do and ensure someone raises this in Parliament. To me, your service sounds essential because the state organizations truly aren't delivering. And we hear this time and time again. Thank you for what you're doing, says Leslie Demisa. So does the Children's Commissioner know all about you? You're nodding. I'm guessing yes.
Yes and no. So Anne Longfield, who was the previous Children's Commissioner, we had a fantastic working relationship with her. We worked on quite a few incredible projects. So one of them was about the standard of the internet and making it safer for young people. The new commissioner, we haven't had much of a response. Maybe she's busy, but it is correct. What we're providing is
busy doing what?
You're
coming along with something which is absolutely essential. She's too busy.
I can't comment.
No, of course you can't. I can, because I don't care. But come on, new commissioner, get your finger out, get hold of Liam. Liam, Ditch the Label. If people want to get hold of it again, it's fantastic. Wonderful to meet you. I hope you'll come back on the show. There's so much we'd like to discuss with you, but time is a-marching. Would you come back? Really, really interesting. Really, really interesting. If people want to get hold of it, especially for their kids or grandchildren, or maybe themselves if they're watching, if you're young, it's ditchthelabel.org. Is that it?
That's right. Or you can just Google Ditch the Label and we will come up.
Absolutely.
Can I just ask actually one final question before we let you go? Just over the 17 years that you've been doing this, what would you say is a standout moment for you?
There was an event called We Day, and they invited me to talk about Ditch the Label at Wembley Arena in front of 12,000 people.
Blimey,
it was incredible. So powerful. Yeah. I will always remember that moment. Yeah.
I bet you do. Liam, brilliant. What a brilliant guest you've been. And thank you. Congratulations on what you've achieved. It shows what can be done if you want it to happen. If you build it, he will come. Liam, thank you so much. We will speak to you again, definitely. Wow. Bye-bye. Thanks a lot. Have a good weekend. Inspirational guy, huh? Inspirational guy.
I just goes to
chat.
Oh, all right, fair enough.
Go on, because I can see our guest is huffing and puffing here.
You can see me huffing and puffing. It doesn't bother you. Anyway, I was going to say that doesn't it just go to show that if you have a situation in your life that is really quite unpleasant, if you really put your mind to it, you can do all sorts of wondrous things with it.
You can, I don't agree with Nietzsche, that which does not kill you makes you strong. I've always thought that's just trash. But, you know, if you can learn from it and you can turn it to your advantage, that's different. But it doesn't make you stronger. It makes you more effed up. We got a new section. It's going to come on every 2 weeks. Phil and I, during the pandemic, Phil and I were both of one mind with this, that art in all its forms is essential for mental health. Absolutely. And both Phil and I were furious. And forgive me for speaking on your behalf, Phil, but, you know.
That's quite all right. Feel free.
I will. Because we were furious when some twerp said, oh, well, during the pandemic, you know, if you're an actor or you're a ballet dancer or whatever, just retrain. You know, as a bill. No, art is essential to our well-being. So looking at the world of theatre from all over the UK, it's one of the country's leading theatre critics with an impeccable record and reputation. Please welcome for the first time, Mr. Jonathan Baz.
Russ, thank you very much for that fabulous introduction. And it's a delight to be here to talk about some aspects of theatre that's recently opened and currently playing in London, but also elsewhere in the country. I've chosen 4 shows to talk about briefly in this slot. The first one that I'll talk about is a play that's currently on at the National Theatre. It's football themed. It's called Dear England. And that title comes from a letter that Gareth Southgate wrote to the nation on the eve of the 2021 European Championships. And the play is all about Gareth Southgate, who's an interesting guy because, of course, in 1996, he stepped up to the penalty spot at Wembley, had his penalty saved against Germany, which was a traumatic episode for him. But then some 1996 to 2016, he was then invited to take up the honours of being England manager. And the play, written by brilliant writer James Graham, who really understands how to get underneath different aspects of British culture, and here he's looking at football, is a fantastic study in how sorry.
Are you all right? Are you choking?
Yeah.
Do I need to call paramedics?
He's so overwhelmed, he's taking his breath away.
He is so excited to be on the Daily Show with you, Phil.
Into how Southgate stepped up to the challenge of becoming England manager. It looks at a journey that he undertook with a psychologist and with a therapist, but from a dramatic point of view, it looks at how he was relating to fellow players, to fellow England managers. The cast is brilliant. There is a fantastic cameo from a relatively unknown actor called Gunnar Kauthry, who absolutely nails Gary Lineker brilliantly.
If only.
You beat me to it by a split second.
Joseph Fiennes is the actor who plays Gareth Southgate. He looks the part,
I didn't know that.
Very dapper in the waistcoat, absolutely gets the mannerisms and the humility of Gareth Southgate. Misses the voice a little bit, in my opinion. Gareth
I don't know
Southgate
what he sounds like. Phil and I got to tell you something. Phil's too polite. I'm not. Phil and I, you could write what we know about football on the head of a pin with a very large Sharpie. Nothing. So if we don't know anything about football, Phil and I know less than the square root of sod all. Is this a play that we can sit and enjoy it as a piece of art rather than you got to be a football fan?
That's a very good question. I have to say it's a very enjoyable night at the theatre. James Graham has constructed a brilliant story, weaves in a lot of music in the background. The design, brilliant designer called S. Devlin has done a staging that will take your breath away. That being said, if you're not into
Was he an asthmatic?
If you're not into football and you're not going to recognize the likes of Sam Allardyce as a character from years ago, or Gareth Southgate himself.
You're not going to believe this, Jonathan. Talk about 6 degrees of separation. I was having a coffee in Soho, and a very dear friend of mine, Keith Bishop, we've been best pals for years, he was with Sam Allardyce, and he goes, "Oh, you know Sam, don't you?" "I don't know Sam Allardyce." I explained, "Please God, don't ask me a question, because that looks so right. Hi, Sam, lovely to meet you." And all that. I couldn't tell you what he did. I just know the name. I know he was a big deal in football at one point. Very nice. He was absolutely charming, by the way.
Manager at Chelsea, wasn't he?
What's wrong with you? What the hell? Where'd you pull that from?
I think it helps if you have a love of the beautiful game.
Well, we don't.
And it's not essential, but it helps. And given that football does have a massive following in this country, I think the play is sold out. And interestingly, I think the play will also, hopefully in the not too distant future, make a very good transition to the movies.
Forgive me. I think it was West Ham, not Chelsea. So I still don't know who he is.
I certainly remember him from his Bolton days, but I would hate to be taken to be an expert on football. Like I say, you don't.
You can see why I don't work for Talk Sport, can't you?
And here with his intuitive interpretation of the Chelsea versus West Ham game, Phil Day. Phil, over to you. Well, there were 22 people. They ran around. I don't know who those.
The grass looks nice today.
That would be Phil, Jonathan.
It's good fun.
Sport. I tell you what, JB, and it's this that I went along to with you to see the Wagatha Christie thing, and I couldn't give a monkey's about
Oh dear,
football.
gracious me, really.
Phil, it was terrific entertainment. You didn't need to know anything about it, which I kind of didn't, and it was great. And when Jonathan kindly invited me a couple of months back, I went, "Oh, really?" I had a wow of an evening. It was really good theatre. Great fun.
And I think that's the mark of a good playwright that can look at an aspect of British culture. The Wagatha Christie play, currently off, it did its tour. The Wagatha Christie play tapped into how we related or read about the footballers' wives and girlfriends. And the playwright there was brilliant. Here, James Graham just has really understood the relationship between this country and its football manager and its football players. It's a very clever piece of theatre. If you love football, you'll love the play even more. If you don't, it's still good fun, and you'll certainly know the song.
Where's it on?
It's on at the National Theatre, and it's playing until the middle of August.
Okie doke, pish posh, National. Okay. I noticed, Paul Claridge, that Phil did not answer your question. Very wise.
No. Oh, not apart from anything. Of course, the answer to that is, of course, they do, but let's not dwell on that.
Of course, they work very, very hard.
Next up to talk about is a far more traditional offering, just opened this week on the south coast at Chichester, and it's Rodgers and Hammerstein's The Sound of Music, directed by a chap called Adam Penford. And I have to say, it is a beautiful take on the musical. You know what you're going to get with The Sound of Music. You're going to get
Nazis and music. Is what you're going to get.
3 hours,
basically.
3 hours of gorgeous songs, and here with an ending surrounded by swastikas and Nazis, as it's all about Austria succumbing to the Anschluss in 1938. This production is lovely. A woman, Gina Beck, who has previously starred in Chichester a couple of years ago in South Pacific, a very accomplished performer, takes the role of Maria, and her singing is beautiful. She absolutely captures Maria and her struggles with deciding to be a nun and not deciding to be a nun, and the love that develops between her and Captain Von Trapp.
As she kicks the habit.
Oh, boom, boom. Wobbling under her wimple. But the play is gorgeous.
Don't laugh, Russell. It only encourages.
The musical.
Jonathan, can I jump in? I want to ask you a question here. It's a serious question. Sound of Music, one of the best loved, musical films of all time. Everybody knows every word. They even do sing-along evenings in the cinema. Why does a production company, because these things are very expensive to put on, why do they decide to put on something that is so well known, and also everyone will judge it against, Julie Andrews or whatever?
I think the answer to that is that with The Sound of Music, you know what you're going to get. And I would say certainly in Chichester, where the demographics of the audience are South Coast and I would say retired, but that's a broad generalization. But you know what you're going to get with The Sound of Music. Yeah. And the trick on any production company putting on any classic musical, you only have to look at, for example, Guys and Dolls currently playing in London, and maybe I'll talk about that in another week, is to do it well. And if you do it well, and people, as you just said a few minutes ago, if you build it, they will come, or maybe you were arguing against that.
No, I wasn't. I was arguing for it.
Yeah. So they've built a fabulous production with an excellent cast. And I would add that Janice Kelly, who's a name shamefully I hadn't heard of, but when you look at her biography in the program, it's massive. She is the soprano who plays the Mother Abbess, the Mother Superior of the convent, whose big number, of course, is Climb Every Mountain, which sends everyone out.
Sang by originally in the film. Peggy
Wood.
Wood.
10, no conferring. Jonathan Baz, Key's College, Cambridge.
Yeah, Peggy Wood. Thank you very much.
Wood.
She is as fabulous as Gina. The ticket is almost worth buying just to hear these two women sing their songs. Gina as Maria and Janice as the Mother Superior, Mother Abbess. They are fabulous. And for a night of solid Rodgers and Hammerstein entertainment done to perfection, it makes for a gorgeous night.
Because you are I'm going to put this politely, but you don't pull your punches, as I said in some of the promos I wrote. If you don't like something, you don't go along with the crowd. And even if everybody else is raving about it, you will say, well, yeah, but I don't have to follow, I'm not a sheep. If I don't like it, I don't like it. So for you to say done to perfection is it's a big deal.
It's gorgeous. It's a lovely night in the theatre. It's the only way to describe it. You know what you're going to get when you buy the ticket for it. It's The Sound of Music. You're going to know the songs off by heart. The story, the story has its flaws, and the having said it's done to perfection, a couple of little niggles in this one, but the way those songs are performed, and this gorgeous troupe of 6 kids that they've lined up to play the Von Trapp brats.
Did you audition for that, Phil?
Well, the truth is that I'm 36 years old and I don't need a governess. So.
Well, you say that. The National Theatre is not pish posh. Someone's tapping their feet. It is still a series of 3 auditoria. God Almighty, within one brutalist art. Okay, it's not pish posh. I get the point. Fair enough. All right. Okay, so Sound of Music. That's on the South Coast. Worst. Can you get there? Forgive me, my geography's crap. Can you get there and back in a day? If you say, "Oh, let's go into a matinee," or "Let's go," we could do that on the train.
You go for a matinee. You can. That's assuming everyone's coming from London. But if you are going
wherever
from
you
London,
are,
yes, you can get there and back comfortably from a matinee. Evening performance, you can drive back. Took me a little over an hour driving back after the evening show, but I would say the evening show, it's a little bit of a stretch to get back to London comfortably. But the answer
we're not
is
London
yes.
centric. Everyone's listening from everywhere.
Absolutely.
And if you're listening in Cambridge, Massachusetts, Don Brown, you won't get back in the day. Yeah,
but like I say, if you go and see it, you won't be disappointed. And it's on until early September in Chichester. Next up, another musical, bit of new writing this time, but a new writing and an old story. This is the musical of The Third Man, classic Graham Greene story.
The one with Joseph Cotton and Orson Welles? Well,
yep,
film, anyway.
Yep, directed by Carol Reed, 1949.
Yeah.
So Don Black, one of our best British lyricists,
ever.
Don Black and Christopher Hampton have turned their musical creative eye to this story and have taken the movie and turned it into a musical. The two of them have done this once before with the film noir, Billy Wilder's gorgeous film noir of Sunset Boulevard. They did that, 20, 30 years ago or thereabouts.
Not to be confused with Andrew Lloyd Webber, though. I'm serious.
Well, Andrew Lloyd Webber wrote the music.
And Don Black did the lyrics.
Don Black and Christopher Hampton did the lyrics for Sunset Boulevard.
Wowza.
I've
forgotten that.
Now they've looked at The Third Man. It's a great story, and of course, Clang, as I was chatting to Don over a coffee only last month,
Pick that name up, everybody.
he was telling me that in his discussions over the years with Hal Prince, who himself a legendary Broadway and to some extent London musicals director, outlined that the success for the 3 ingredients for a good musical are the book, and the book. There needs to be a strong underlying story. Don said how impressed Billy Wilder was, who actually saw the musical not long before he passed away. Billy Wilder saw the musical of Sunset Boulevard and was so impressed how religiously they'd kept to the original storyline. So it is with The Third Man. It's on at the Menier Chocolate Factory in London, which is a small theatre down near London Bridge. And it lends itself very well to the grimy, gritty, post-war Vienna of the 1940s. You get the sleaziness of the Viennese underworld. They've even gone so far as to recreate the scene on the Ferris wheel.
On the Ferris wheel.
Yeah, they've got that in there. It's a nice touch, and it's a very imaginative tribute to the film. Whether this show will have a future life, who knows? It's
pretty niche, though, isn't it? It's pretty niche. If you're wondering where Phil is, he's very busy taking phone calls. I think he's got 20 quid on the favourite, the 3:30 this afternoon. He's got to sort that out. And other things. He is a very busy man.
Apologies.
That's okay.
It's not like we're live or anything.
Was Rupert okay? Rupert,
it is niche. It is niche, but interestingly, there is apparently a cinema in Vienna that continually shows The Third Man, has been showing The Third Man since it came out in 1940, 1950, whatever.
What?
So it's niche here, it's not niche over there. And in fact, the musical initially I think 6 years ago, Don and Christopher.
Has anyone checked to see if the projector's got stuck or something? I mean, maybe that's what the problem is.
Dead. I think the projectionist is dead, and no
Maybe
one's
they've just got themselves in the room and they're just like playing on a constant loop and they don't realise it.
So it's very popular over there. Niche over here. Certainly niche amongst people under a certain age.
You'd never have heard of it. You'd never have heard of it.
What the Third Man is about.
No.
Under whatever their age may be, not so sure.
Under
That being
60.
said, it is one of the British classics of movie making. And I have to say, Don and Christopher have done a great job with the lyrics. Music this time by a chap called George Fenton and the venerable Trevor
George
Nunn.
Benson?
No, George Fenton.
I was going to say, good Lord.
And Trevor Nunn has rocked up to direct it.
So nobody big then. Don Black, Christopher Hampton, Trevor Nunn. No one big. Good.
Don Black, indeed. The final show that I'll come to this week is Crazy for You, which
what? Yes.
Oh, feels awake.
Yes.
Here we go.
Bloody
a couple of weeks
fantastic
ago
it was.
in the West End. This production is in fact another Chichester production, because this show opened in Chichester last summer. It was their smash hit musical of last year. And Crazy for You is a musical built around the songs of George and Ira Gershwin. It's an interesting show because, of course, the Gershwins wrote their songs back in the 1920s, 1930s, thereabouts. And this show was only ever created in the 1990s when the Gershwin estate spoke with Ken Ludwig and also a brilliant theatrical creative guy, Mike Ockrent. This was back in the 1990s. Mike tragically died young in 1999. But the show was created back in the 1990s, choreographed by Mike's then wife, now his widow, Susan Stroman. That name may mean something to you because Susan Stroman then has become in recent years a very accomplished Broadway director, choreographer in her own right, and a bit in the UK too. And last year, Chichester, she tells a lovely story. It was during the pandemic when Daniel Evans, who was the then artistic director of Chichester, got on the phone to her and said, "Do you fancy coming over to Chichester to direct Crazy for You?" Just when she thought she'd never work again on Broadway when all the theatres were dark. It's a very, very lovely story. She came over, directed the show, choreographed it last year. I saw it twice in Chichester last year and once again a couple of weeks ago here in London, and it absolutely blows you away. The songs are terrific. I Got Rhythm, Someone to Watch Over Me. You know the songs. They're done here magnificently. Her choreography is just sensational. There's no gimmicks to the show. There are no helicopters or chandeliers that come down the stage.
Oh, you're
There's
kidding.
just wonderful imagination.
Believe me, you don't need it. I promise you. Go and see it. You don't need it.
It's interesting you say this, guys, because I remember back in the day when we were invited to Capital Everything, and I was at the opening of an envelope because we were a cheap date. I saw it then, and I seem to remember I liked it very much.
Well, let me put it this way. I think that if you haven't seen this incarnation of it with the sensational Charlie Stemp at the helm, I would strongly suggest you're missing out.
Okay.
Yep.
Charlie Stemp, am I going mad? Was he in Mary Poppins? Did he play the Dick Van Dyke?
He did. He played the Bert in Mary Poppins. What shot him to fame, of course, was his portrayal of Arthur Kipps in Half a Sixpence. He is, honest to God, this guy is just in my humble, the Michael Crawford of our day.
Indeed. I mean, Half a Sixpence, of course, was another Chichester creation a few years ago. That's where it came from. With Charlie
What's
Stemp.
with Chichester? While we've got you, what's with Chichester? Why is it a hotbed that everything starts there, it comes to London, and it's always good? What's the deal?
I wouldn't say everything starts there, but a lot of good stuff does start there. It's one of the better regional theatres in the country. It's well managed, well run. Daniel Evans was a great artistic director who really had an eye for what's going to work. But it's interesting you talk about Charlie Stemp, Phil, being the next Michael Crawford. And I think you're absolutely right. In fact, Cameron McIntosh made that observation about him back at the time when Half a Sixpence opened. Now, I don't know if either of you, Phil, not so sure, Russ, possibly. Do you remember the musical Billy that was on?
Yeah, sure. Produced by Shirley Green of Woodland Hills, California.
And lyrics again written by Don Black.
Yeah. Yep.
And
I saw that.
That was a great show back in the mid 1970s. Don was saying it would be so lovely if it could come back. Who is the person that could be playing Billy?
Keith Lemon, obviously.
Sorry?
Gemma Collins and Keith Lemon. I tell you that this is good. I'm so pleased you say this. Francoise Pascal says it's refreshing that the theatre is being talked about. Thank you, Francoise. That was my view. I chatted it through with Phil as well, and I think think it's important. Well, I didn't. I'm lying. I didn't tell you. I just said this is what I said.
This is a surprise to me. Very pleasant surprise, but it's a surprise.
This is what we're doing. I just said this is what we're doing. Phil, he went, I can't talk to you. I got Rupert on the phone, and he put the phone down on me. Good. Thank you. Paul Claridge, Panto shoes. No, that's never.
You do know you didn't actually let Jonathan finish his story there. He was saying about sort of Billy and sort of what was said about Charlie Stemp.
So, no, I mean, that's it. It's a lovely show. Going back to Crazy for You in Chichester. It's on until Crazy for You came from Chichester. It's at London. It's at the Gillian Lynn Theatre. Just outside Covent Garden, and it's playing until January next year at the moment, unless it gets extended any further. So you can book all the way through.
What I was going to say, I think Graham's got the answer to that. I don't think it can be extended at Gillian Lynn because the next production of Sky's Edge will be at Gillian Lynn. So I don't think it can be extended there, but it's possible it will transfer if it's as popular as I think it's going to be. So
is the Gillian? What was it known as before? Because I don't remember.
Wasn't it the New West End?
No, it was called the New London Theatre.
That was it.
London, New London. New West End is a synagogue. I'm sorry, yeah. The New London, that's... I knew it was something like that. Sorry. Bear with, It's an easy mistake to make.
Renamed the Gillian Lynn, of course, after the late, great Gillian Lynn, who choreographed Cats. And
Russell.
Cats for many, many years.
She did Cats. Yes, I hated that show. Can I just say that I hated that show?
Luckily, thousands of audience goers, or millions of audience goers, disagreed with you, and it
I know they loved it. It's so weird, Jonathan. This is the thing about personal choice, right? Back in the day, it was the press show for Cats, a million. No one had seen it. Dragged along because I was, we were invited to everything at Capitol. It was great. I sat there going, oh Jesus Christ. Anyway, and then it was like 10 or 20th anniversary, and I was invited back again. And I thought, I bet my tastes have matured. I hated it more that time. I don't like cats. Sorry, I'm not into cats. It was called dogs. Okay. Cats, not so much.
Get on to Lloyd Webber, quick. He needs to write a prequel.
Good dogs. I know. Look, I'm in the minority of one, but my point is, Jonathan, you can't like everything.
True. And so that's my offering for this week.
Can I just say, by the way, actually, speaking of Gillian Lynn Theatre, I've been there twice within the last year. It is a sensational theatre. Can I tell you for why? It almost doesn't matter where you sit. You nearly always get a brilliant view of the stage. And it is so rare to be able to say that in
Bridge Theatre as well.
Well, it's a modern building. It was constructed, I'm not sure when, in the 50s or the 60s. And when sightlines were taken into consideration rather than the Victorian. Now, to be fair, the Victorians did build a lot of theatres, but they didn't care what your view was like if you were sat in the cheap seats.
No, and on the contrary, I put it to you, they didn't care what the view was like from the raw box either. It's extraordinary.
Can I ask a serious question before I let you go, Jonathan? I find many of the old theatres beautiful to look at, are sodding uncomfortable. Were the this is a serious question. Were they much shorter than we are now? Because I've got my knees around my nose. I'm thinking, God, 3 hours of this. Much as I want to enjoy it, I'm just uncomfortable.
And it never fails. You're always next to someone who's expanding into your space.
Completely.
No,
As they chew on a Malteser, you just think,
I had
please,
better.
it's too
I
late.
had someone swigging
I think-
Benylin.
I think on the basis that back in the day, Shakespeare had his audiences in the cheap seats standing
Yes.
as the groundlings at the Globe. I reckon the Victorians probably looked at a seat for everyone as progress.
Oh, I see. And much as they've done, and you've touched on it very briefly, I know you're going to review it in a couple of weeks, but Guys and Dolls, we went to the immersive. It was fantastic. It was absolutely brilliant. Jonathan Baz, thank you. Thank you. Lovely to see these great comments. We will see you in a couple of weeks' time. Take care. Bless you for joining the Daily Show with me and Phil on Men's Radio Station. See you soon. Bye-bye. Very nice guy.
Well.
Very, very, very nice guy. Thank you so much. It was an experiment, and I'm so pleased that you...
It does go to show that not all experiments work. No, I'm joking. Right, anyway.
I never really liked you, Phil, but you're cheap. I really do believe it. It's not that we're trying to fill stuff. I've got people who want to come on the show get up the kazoo. I don't
absolutely, and they're being shoved to the back for this.
So, who is you?
No, I'm saying they're being shoved to the back.
Discuss anything.
Not me. You said you've got people who are crying out to come on the show.
Well, they are.
But Francois, I am jealous. She's going to see Moulin Rouge on Monday. I really want to go and see that.
So, Francois, if you're doing that, please pop into the Crazy Cox for not the Crazy Cox, that's the venue. What's it called?
Brasserie Zadel.
Zadel. Pop in there for a snack or something. It's fantastic.
Literally bang opposite.
It's completely opposite. You couldn't get any closer. Hey, you get Phil to Phil. No, Phil doesn't. Phil is. I would have Thrill. I would have Phil on every day. He's too busy.
I'm an integral part of this show. I'll have you know.
Damn right he is, and far more going forward. But more of that, more of that another time. More of that another time. It's been a very heavy. I'm very glad we had this because I got to be honest with you, Phil. It's been a really heavy week with our guests.
Oh, lots of carbs. Oh, I see. Sorry, yes, it is.
God, you don't. Now I'm stuck because if I say,
now you're starting to wonder whether or not.
You see, this is the thing. Oh. I'm about to say something.
And is it going to make me feel really guilty?
Well, hopefully, yeah. I mean, otherwise, why would I bother? One was about child abuse. Let's do the gag. Want to do the gag now? You want to do some gags?
Heavens! Well, I'm pleased I put it in when I did.
No, yeah, thank God. And that was really heavy. It was an extraordinary guest. Not my shame. You could look that up. That was on Monday's guest as well. It was really heavy. And what is interesting, and I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, like you remember when we had the studio and you and I would be there, and sometimes, especially if it was people who had relatives who had decided to end their own lives, and you and I would come out to the street in Covent Garden and go, and go and get a drink because we need.
I was going to say, and people actually sort of think it wasn't so much just a case of that we like socializing, because to be honest, we don't really. It's quite a struggle whenever we socialize. But but when we finished the show, when we finished the show, genuinely, it was a case of I need something to help with that, because it's, and I'm not saying that drink is the answer, by the way, so please drink responsibly and all that. But what I'm trying to get at is it was just so traumatic by proxy that you almost had to do something just to escape.
It was I had a very difficult meeting yesterday. I'm not going into any details. An exceptionally difficult meeting. It was not what I was expecting. I thought I was going in to discuss one thing, and 3 hours later, and I was wrecked from it. Absolutely, I can't go into any details. It's all sub judice. But
isn't it interesting? Isn't it interesting? Sort of the actual physical effect that emotions can have on us. You know, I actually sort of think that people sort of say it quite dismissively, but actually, I believe that if someone is in an emotionally intense situation, the physical repercussions are absolutely extraordinary.
Oh, yeah, it was. It was really heavy duty, and I think a lot of people think, well, if you're broadcasting, I know it's not the BBC or whatever, but if you're broadcasting, you're immune. You just don't. And I really, this week, I'll be absolutely frank, I've been really quite affected by all our guests. My meeting yesterday afternoon, which absolutely wasted me, was like, I got out in the street and I had to like take deep breaths. It was just horrible. Yeah, we don't do that. And we try not to take it on board. There's a difference. And I think this is what presumably all therapists have to do, and psychiatrists, is that one can be empathetic, which I know Phil is very empathetic. I try to be.
I don't know about very. I try, but I don't know about very.
I was being polite. Well, Phil turns up, and you don't want to absorb it. That's the danger. You can't absorb other people's issues because they become your issues, and they're not your issues.
What I try and tell myself, and I'm assuming that it's very similar with you, Russ, as well, is that whenever we go through an interview that is quite hard hitting, always at the back of my mind is to think, if I'm finding this tough, number one, I have to consider what the person who's doing the interview has actually gone through before I find it tough. Secondly, is that it's not about whether or not I find it tough, is if it helps someone the other end, even if it helps just one person, that's why we do it. And that's why it's important.
That's all that matters. You know, we're irrelevant. Yeah, right. But it is, and people have said, well, what do you want to do? What do you want to do with the radio? And I said, well, and as Phil has so rightly said, if it helps one person, job done. That's it. You know, if it can help hundreds of thousands of people, marvelous. But if you can help one person at a time, that's it. I remember years ago when I was I was chief barker and a trustee of Variety. It was Variety Club, it's now called Variety, the children's charity. And I asked a marvelous woman, you know, the applications for wheelchairs. It was a nightmare. And, you know, it was very sad. And I said, how do we deal with this? And she was a very sensible woman. And she said, one child at a time. And I'd never forgotten her words of wisdom. Extraordinary human being. And I've always taken that really to be my motto. If we can change one person at a time, that's okay. That's okay. Keep it realistic, you know. Keep our goals realistic as well. Fat Scotty says this, and he knows, because joking aside, he is an actual broadcaster of some repute. Radio is an exceptionally mentally and physically taxing medium. You're trying to paint a mental pictures via audio and help guests and listeners to navigate the content. A great job, but equally hard. Yeah. Hard.
But I don't think anyone, honestly, I truly don't think anyone who works in this industry who's lucky enough to work in it should ever feel sorry for themselves. It's an extraordinary privilege, no matter what level one does it at.
And the other problem with this industry, it's dead man's shoes, a revolting phrase, but you know, you can only have one person in the studio. I don't mean like us. I'm talking about if you went to the BBC or Radio London or Talk TV or whatever it is, you could only get that job if somebody leaves.
Which is very unlikely. And I'm afraid the truth is that was one of the first bits of advice I ever obtained. They said that if you are waiting for on-air work, you either have to wait for someone to quit, well, not very likely given the competition, or you have to wait for them to no longer be physically around anymore. And that really was it.
That's it. And I hope in schools where there's there's sort of audio schools, radio schools, broadcasting schools, they really should tell the kids coming in, this is the deal. There's no ladder that you can start climbing. You know, behind the scenes, maybe if you're really good technically. I mean, Phil's brilliant technically, so you can do all of that sort of stuff. But if you want to be in front of the camera, in front of the mic, you have to wait for someone to go in whatever way that might be, either retire, be fired, or die. That's it.
And on that cheery note,
it's a unique situation. It's a neat. Would you like to read this? Because I think it's a very good point, Phil, that Scott Lyons is making.
Scotty says that we're always helping the single person in radio. We speak, play, and broadcast to one person every time, and we're helping the one person times 100. It resonates across a whole audience individually, and I couldn't agree more. And I've always said that if ever anyone is new to on air and they want pointers of how to do it, I'd always say the same thing. It's one of the great things I was taught, and I've never forgotten it. Very simply, never try and think you're standing in an auditorium speaking to a room full of people. You imagine one person down the other end of that lens, or you imagine one person just listening to you, and that's all you need.
That's why it's such because when you hear other shows, you go, hey, everybody in Radio Land, you go, I'm in
it drives me
Radio Land. I'm
bonkers.
in 33 the High Street, Peckham, or whatever it is. Stop it. It's horrible. Phil, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, everybody, for your lovely comments about Jonathan Baz. It's nice.
Don't worry, Chantel's back. Chantel's back next week.
Chantel, by the way, she hasn't gone. She's so sweet. Very quickly, she's actually on a train. She said, "I'll get off at a station." I said, "No, you won't get off at a station so you could broadcast. Take the day off and enjoy a break, for goodness sake."
And on that note, enjoy the weekend.
Absolutely. Take care. I'll be back Monday at 12.
Bye.